Ladies and gentlemen, you ever notice how the quietest daggers come wrapped in smiles? Sometimes it ain't what they say that stings, it's what they really mean. You've changed. Now listen to that. They don't mean it like it's growth. No, they mean it like a betrayal. Like, how dare you outgrow the version of yourself they were comfortable with? Let me tell you something. Change is not betrayal. Change is the price of purpose. And anybody who's afraid of your growth wasn't rooting for you in the first place. Then comes, I must be nice. You know that one. That little line soaked in salt, in admiration. That's envy wearing a cheap mask. You earned where you are. That degree, that success, that peace of mind, you fought for it. And if they can't celebrate it, let them sit in their discomfort while you walk in your blessing that you're just lucky. Yeah. No, that's discipline. That's grind. That's showing up on the days you wanted to quit. The people who whisper luck never saw the nights you cried, the mornings you pushed yourself, the days you stood alone. Don't let them shrink your story into a soundbite. Don't get a big head. Let me tell you, confidence isn't arrogance. There's nothing wrong with standing tall in who you are. You didn't come this far to dim your light because someone else forgot how to shine. Humility is quiet, but self-worth, that walks in the room before you do. And finally, some people are so full of themselves. That phrase, that's the anthem of the insecure. When someone is centered, focused, grounded, folks who are off balance get uncomfortable. But you stay centered, you stay rooted, you stay full of purpose, not ego. There's a difference. See, jealousy don't shout, it whispers. It sneaks in through the side door, dressed like concern, masked as advice, disguised as jokes. But if you listen with wisdom, if you trust your gut, you'll hear the truth behind the words. Don't let it rattle you, let it remind you. Because if your presence makes them uncomfortable, imagine what your purpose will do. Let them talk. You walk and don't ever apologize for becoming exactly who you were created to be. Jealousy doesn't always enter the room loudly. It doesn't come with flashing signs or aggressive insults. Often it hides in the folds of ordinary conversation, in the words we brush off as harmless, in the subtle tones we convince ourselves are just a jokes, in the polite phrases we hear from people we consider friends, family, even mentors. The truth is, jealousy is one of the most masked emotions, and it rarely shows up in the form we expect. You see, polite language can be a disguise. It can look like support on the outside, but feel like sabotage when you look closer. Someone might say, wow, you're really doing well these days, with a smile, but there's a stiffness behind the compliment. It doesn't feel warm. It feels measured, tight, almost resentful. They're watching you climb, but they're not cheering. They're calculating how you got there, trying to reconcile your success with their own comfort level. It can sound like concern too. Phrases like, don't work too hard, or don't forget where you came from, can carry an undertone. On the surface, they sound caring, but the subtext, it's different. It suggests you've changed, and not for the better. It implies that your ambition has made you lose touch, when in reality, it's their discomfort with your growth that speaks louder than their words. People often project their own fears and frustrations onto those who are moving forward. Jealousy loves to wear the clothes of humor. Think about the sarcasm tucked into phrases like, well, look at you, Miss Fancy now, or I guess someone thinks they've made it. These words are tossed out with a laugh, but there's tension behind them. What's being said isn't always about humor. It's about power dynamics, about control. When someone jokes about your success in a way that minimizes it, they're not really laughing with you. They're trying to bring you back to a version of yourself that made them feel comfortable, equal, in control. It can even be found in compliments, backhanded ones. Someone might say, I never thought you'd be the type to succeed in that field. Or you're actually pretty smart for someone who didn't go to college. Wrapped in flattery, these statements actually diminish. They highlight surprise at your success as if your progress is somehow undeserved or shocking. That's not admiration. That's envy cloaked in etiquette. It's the kind of language that cuts with a velvet blade. And jealousy isn't always about money or fame. Sometimes it's your peace that bothers people, your calm, your glow. You find people trying to poke at it, to unbalance you. It must be nice to not care about anything. They'll say as if inner peace is laziness, as if happiness is something shameful or indulgent. When you start showing joy without seeking permission, it reveals the places where others feel stuck. Instead of examining their own frustration, they turn their gaze on you. It's important to realize that these polite phrases are not always born of malice. Jealousy is a deeply human emotion. Everyone feels it at some point. But when it's unexamined, when it's unhealed, it spills out in everyday language, in subtle undermining comments, in false encouragement that's laced with bitterness. And when you're not paying attention, you internalize it. You start questioning yourself. You begin to shrink to make others feel more comfortable. You over-explain your choices. You hide your wins. You play small. What makes this kind of jealousy dangerous is its camouflage. When someone openly insults you, you know where you stand. But when they hide their envy behind manners, behind polite smiles, behind, "I'm just being honest," or "I'm just looking out for you," it's harder to detect and harder to defend against. You may even feel guilty for noticing it. You tell yourself you're overthinking, being paranoid or ungrateful, but your intuition knows the difference. Your spirit recognizes when words don't match energy, when each support feels more like sabotage, when the love feels like restraint. And so you learn to read between the lines. You stop just listening to the words and start listening to the tone, the timing, the pattern. You notice how people show up when you win, not just when you struggle. You see who claps with full hearts and who claps with tight jaws. You recognize when a good for you feels more like a warning than a celebration. And slowly you start to protect your space, not out of bitterness, but out of wisdom. You understand that not everyone who's polite is rooting for you, and not every compliment is clean. Jealousy is clever. It knows how to hide in language. But once you know what to look for, you can see it. You can feel it. And you don't need to fight it. You just need to recognize it and choose peace over reaction, purpose over pettiness, and truth over pretending everything's okay when it's not. Backhanded compliments are some of the most confusing and emotionally draining forms of communication we encounter, especially when they come from people we know, trust, or admire. They sound like praise, but they sting like criticism. They're delivered with a smile, but they leave a bruise. That's because these types of comments are not rooted in genuine admiration or respect. They're rooted in jealousy. They're a mask envy wears when it wants to hide behind politeness. A backhanded compliment often begins with what sounds like support. "You're actually really good at that for someone your age. I didn't expect you to pull that off, but you did. Good for you. You're prettier than I thought you'd be in person." These phrases might come across as friendly, even encouraging at first glance. But when you look closely, you notice the twist. There's always a subtle jab embedded within the praise. It's a way for someone to acknowledge your success while trying to downplay it or attach it to surprise, as if you somehow managed to succeed despite a perceived shortcoming. The psychology behind this is layered. People who give backhanded compliments often feel threatened, but don't know how to express it. They might not even be consciously aware that jealousy is what they're experiencing. All they know is that your glow makes them uncomfortable. Your win reminds them of something they haven't done, something they want, something they believe they deserve. So instead of dealing with their insecurity directly, they lace their admiration with a quiet insult. It lets them feel like they're still holding power in the interaction. It's a defense mechanism, a way to acknowledge your growth without fully surrendering to it. This happens often in environments where competition is subtle but ever present. Workplaces, social circles, family dynamics, anywhere people compare status, looks, intelligence, or progress. You might get told, "Wow, I didn't think someone like you would end up in this kind of role," or "That's a bold outfit, but you pull it off somehow." These comments pretend to build you up while also trying to remind you of where they believe you came from, what box they placed you in, or how you stepped outside what they thought was your lane. It's especially common for women to receive these kinds of compliments, particularly in male-dominated spaces or among other women dealing with their own internalized insecurities. A woman gets praised for being a surprisingly smart, or more than just a pretty face or intimidating, but in a good way. None of these are true compliments. They're coded messages that try to keep the woman small while pretending to uplift her. They acknowledge her power, but only in a way that frames it as unusual, unexpected, or borderline inappropriate. The damage these kinds of comments cause is subtle but real. Because they arrive dressed as kindness, it's easy to doubt your reaction to them. You might feel ungrateful or overly sensitive for being hurt by something that sounds nice, but the discomfort is valid. Your spirit recognizes when a compliment is laced with envy, that uncomfortable feeling in your chest or stomach. That's your inner wisdom alerting you to energy that doesn't match the words being spoken. And if you ignore that too often, you begin to internalize the message that your success must always come with qualifiers, that you're not allowed to be celebrated without being diminished in the same breath. What's worse is that backhanded compliments often come from people close to you, friends, colleagues, even family. Because of that, we tolerate them longer than we should. We excuse them, rationalize them, or laugh them off to avoid awkwardness or conflict. But over time, these comments can build a narrative that chips away at your self-image. They plant little seeds of doubt. And that's exactly what envy wants, to remind you that no matter how far you go, there are people who will never let you forget where they think you started. Responding to these comments requires clarity and emotional intelligence. It's easy to get defensive, to snap back, or to over-explain yourself. But sometimes the most powerful response is silence, a confident smile that says, "I see through you." Other times it's calling the statement for what it is, calmly and without drama. Ooh, that sounds more like a dig than a compliment. What did you really mean by that? By holding people accountable, you send a message, not just to them, but to yourself, that you won't tolerate disguised disrespect. There's nothing wrong with genuine feedback or constructive criticism. Growth often comes from challenge. But backhanded compliments are not about helping you grow. They're about keeping you small while allowing someone else to feel bigger. Once you learn to recognize them, you also learn to stop shrinking in response to them. You learn to separate the energy behind the words from the words themselves. You learn to trust your gut over social niceties. And most importantly, you learn to keep shining no matter how many people try to shade your light with a smile. People often project their insecurities onto others they admire or envy, and they usually don't even realize they're doing it. It's one of the most common defense mechanisms in human behavior. When someone sees qualities in another person that they wish they had or feel they could never possess, it stirs something uncomfortable inside them. Rather than sitting with that discomfort, owning it, or using it as motivation to grow, they deflect it outward. They push those uneasy feelings onto the person who triggered them. It's not about the other person doing something wrong. It's about them doing something that forces someone else to confront what they feel they're lacking. This projection can take many subtle forms. A person might criticize someone for being too confident when in reality, they wish they had even a fraction of that confidence. They'll say, she's trying too hard, when what they really mean is, I wish I had the courage to show up like that. They'll call someone a lucky or accuse them of a showing off because it's easier than admitting they feel stuck or behind. Rather than being inspired by someone else's light, they choose to feel threatened by it. And so they create narratives that bring that person down to a level where they feel safe again. What makes this behavior so complicated is that it's often dressed in familiar language. You'll hear things like, don't get ahead of yourself, or she thinks she's better than everyone, or he's not even that talented. These statements don't come from an objective place. They come from comparison. They come from the silent scoreboard people keep in their heads. The person they envy becomes a mirror, reflecting back to them everything they wish they were, everything they believe they can't be, or everything they haven't done yet. That mirror makes them uncomfortable, so they try to shatter with criticism, sarcasm, and judgment. Projection isn't always loud. In fact, it's usually quiet. It shows up in side eyes, passive-aggressive comments, or that strange tension that fills the room when someone talks about their goals or achievements. Someone shares good news, and instead of celebration, there's silence, or worse, indifference. Sometimes there's forced enthusiasm, but you can feel the weight behind it. People nod, smile, maybe even say congratulations, but something's off. You sense they're measuring you against their own life, not because you did anything wrong, but because your growth triggered their insecurity. This dynamic often plays out among friends, coworkers, and even family. The closer the relationship, the deeper the impact. When someone you care about projects their insecurity onto you, it's confusing. You may feel guilty for your success. You might start to dim your light to make them more comfortable. You downplay your wins, shrink your ideas, or stop sharing your dreams altogether. And in doing so, you internalize their discomfort as your burden when it never was. Sometimes people project their own fear of failure. If they've told themselves a story that if people like me don't succeed or it's too late to change, then watching someone else break those limits can be jarring. Rather than revising their belief system, which requires effort and vulnerability, they reject the new evidence. You don't fit into the box they built for themselves. So instead of expanding the box, they try to put you back inside it. That's where comments like, "You've changed," or "Don't forget where you came from," come in. It's not really about you forgetting anything. It's about them fearing that they'll be left behind. People also project when they feel unseen or unfulfilled. Someone might envy another's relationship, lifestyle, creativity, or even their peace of mind. But instead of admitting that envy, they disguise it as critique. They'll point out flaws, question motives, or try to undermine confidence. It gives them a temporary sense of control. By tearing someone else down, they don't have to look at their own dissatisfaction too closely. But that relief is short-lived, and the cycle repeats. The reality is, admiration and envy are often two sides of the same coin. It's okay to admire someone and still feel a twinge of longing or comparison. That's human. But projection happens when someone refuses to own that emotion and instead places the weight of it on another person's shoulders. It becomes less about self-reflection and more about self-protection. Recognizing this pattern is key to not taking things personally. When you understand that someone's criticism or coldness might have more to do with their own reflection than your reality, you stop absorbing it. You can empathize with their struggle without accepting their projections as truth. Because at the end of the day, the way people treat others is often just a louder version of how they speak to themselves. And once you realize that, their words lose power and your peace returns. These phrases often target women who are confident, ambitious, or successful because society has long been uncomfortable with women who fully step into their power. There is an unspoken expectation that women should be agreeable, modest, and soft-spoken about their strengths. When a woman dares to defy that mold, when she speaks up, shows up, and stands out, she disrupts the norm. And people don't always respond with support. Instead, they respond with passive-aggressive remarks, subtle digs, and coded language meant to bring her back down to where they think she belongs. It starts early. A confident girl is called a bossy, while a boy showing the same behavior is seen as a leader. A woman who knows what she wants is labeled a too much, intimidating, or high maintenance. These aren't compliments. They're warnings designed to remind her that she's stepping outside the role others have assigned to her. The more success she achieves, the louder these warnings become. Not because she's doing anything wrong, but because her presence alone challenges deeply rooted insecurities and outdated expectations. When a woman walks into a room with confidence, people notice, some admire it, but others feel threatened by it. That threat doesn't always manifest as open confrontation. Instead, it comes in phrases disguised as concern or humor. You must be really lucky to get where you are. Or don't let success go to your head. Oh, it's great what you've done, especially for a woman. These statements seem harmless at first glance, but beneath the surface, they reveal discomfort. They subtly suggest that her accomplishments are unexpected, conditional, or somehow less legitimate because of her gender. Women who are ambitious are often told to be careful not to come off as aggressive. Their drive is questioned in ways that men rarely experience. If they speak with authority, they're accused of being cold or unapproachable. If they set boundaries, they're labeled as difficult. And if they express pride in their achievements, they're told they're arrogant. These reactions aren't rooted in truth. They're reflections of a society that's still learning how to accept powerful women without trying to control or silence them. Even in personal relationships, confident women often face these veiled criticism. They're told they don't need a man, as if independence is a flaw. They're asked, but don't you think you're being a little selfish when they prioritize their goals or say no to things that don't serve them? Success can sometimes isolate them because the people around them don't always know how to support someone who refuses to settle, who demands more, who keeps evolving. And rather than confront their own discomfort or inadequacy, subtly chip away at the woman's confidence. The irony is that many of these comments come from people who claim to admire her. Friends, co-workers, family members, they'll say, I could never do what you do, or wow, you're so brave, but the tone carries envy more than praise. There's a difference between being genuinely inspired by someone and feeling the need to balance that inspiration with a backhanded compliment or subtle critique. These phrases are often less about the woman herself and more about what she represents. She becomes a mirror, reflecting back to others what they haven't allowed themselves to be. That can be uncomfortable. So instead of dealing with that discomfort, they try to minimize her, even while pretending to support her. Social media amplifies this dynamic. A woman posts a win, starting a business, achieving a personal goal, expressing her joy, and suddenly the comments shift. People begin questioning her authenticity, accusing her of being a fake, doing too much, or showing off. They ask, who does she think she is? That question reveals everything. Because the real issue is that she thinks she is worthy, capable, deserving. And that mindset threatens the beliefs of those who still question their own value. This isn't about blaming individuals. It's about recognizing the patterns. When confident, ambitious, and successful women are met with these kinds of phrases, it's rarely about them personally. It's about the discomfort others feel when someone breaks free from expectations. Language becomes a tool to subtly restore the old balance. Not through direct confrontation, but through the steady drip of doubt, the sly remark, the well-placed joke. To navigate this landscape, women often learn to filter compliments, to listen closely to tone, to trust their gut when something feels off. They carry themselves with grace while constantly discerning what's real and what's veiled criticism. It can be exhausting, but it also builds strength. Because over time, these women realize they don't need to explain or soften themselves for anyone's comfort. They realize that the words people choose often say more about them than about the woman they're trying to contain. That recognizing jealousy is a powerful tool for protecting your energy and self-worth because it allows you to understand the true nature of the interactions and emotions that surround you. Jealousy, while a natural human feeling, often disguises itself in ways that can drain you emotionally if left unchecked. When you learn to identify the signs of jealousy, whether it's in others' words, actions, or subtle behaviors, you equip yourself with the ability to not take things personally. Instead of internalizing negativity or doubting your value, you see it for what it is. Someone else has struggled with their own insecurities. This awareness creates a kind of emotional armor. When a person's jealousy shows up as criticism, passive aggressiveness, or backhanded compliments, it can be tempting to respond with self-doubt or defensiveness. But recognizing jealousy helps you pause and assess the real intention behind those words. You realize that their reactions have more to do with their own fears and limitations than with your worth or achievements. This shift in perspective is freeing. It stops you from absorbing negativity and keeps your energy focused on growth, confidence, and positive relationships. Protecting your energy is about setting boundaries, both external and internal. Externally, it means deciding who you allow into your life and how much influence their opinions have over you. When you identify jealousy in someone's behavior, you become more mindful about engaging with that person in ways that protect your mental and emotional well-being. It might mean limiting time with those who drain you, choosing not to share certain achievements with people who react with envy, or simply not entertaining conversations that leave you feeling diminished. Internally, it means cultivating self-awareness so that you don't let others' jealousy shake your sense of self. You affirm your worth independently of outside validation. Understanding jealousy also helps you avoid the trap of comparison. One of the most corrosive effects of jealousy is that it fuels comparison, which can erode self-esteem and create a constant sense of not measuring up. When you recognize jealousy, whether in yourself or others, you become more compassionate toward the human tendency to compare, while also realizing that comparison is a losing game. Instead of comparing yourself to others, you start focusing on your own journey, your unique strengths, and the progress you've made. This mindset shift strengthens your self-worth and reduces the impact of others' envious behaviors. Recognizing jealousy also empowers you to cultivate healthier relationships. When you see envy disguised as criticism or subtle undermining, you can address it or choose to distance yourself from toxic dynamics. You become less tolerant of passive-aggressive behavior or backhanded compliments because you understand what's really driving them. This clarity allows you to surround yourself with people who genuinely celebrate your successes and support your growth. It also teaches you to be honest and kind in your own responses, breaking the cycle of jealousy instead of perpetuating it. Another crucial aspect is that recognizing jealousy encourages personal growth and emotional maturity. When you can identify jealousy in others, it often reflects patterns you might see in yourself. This recognition becomes a mirror for self-reflection, helping you understand your own fears and triggers. By acknowledging your own moments of envy without judgment, you can work through them in healthier ways, turning potentially destructive feelings into motivation for self-improvement rather than resentment or bitterness. This cycle of awareness and growth reinforces your self-worth and emotional resilience. Jealousy thrives in secrecy and denial. It's when jealousy is unrecognized or ignored that it causes the most damage, both to relationships and to your inner peace. When you don't recognize it, you might misinterpret others' behaviors as personal attacks or fail to see the hidden dynamics that influence interactions. This can leave you confused, frustrated, or doubting yourself. But once you name it, you take away its power. It becomes just another emotion, something you observe without letting it control your reactions or your mood. Protecting your energy by recognizing jealousy also means choosing peace over conflict. You don't have to engage in every jealous comment or fight every passive-aggressive remark. Sometimes the best response is silence, detachment, or redirecting your attention to what truly matters, your goals, your happiness, your growth. When you don't feed the jealousy, it loses momentum. This choice to rise above jealousy doesn't make you immune to pain or disappointment, but it does make you stronger, more centered, and less vulnerable to emotional manipulation. Finally, recognizing jealousy reinforces the value of authenticity. When you understand that jealousy often masks fear, insecurity, or unmet needs in others, you can choose to be authentic without fear of judgment. You don't have to shrink yourself to fit into someone else's comfort zone. Instead, you claim your full self, your ambitions, your confidence, your light, and protect it fiercely. This authenticity draws the right people towards you and helps you build a life grounded in self-respect and genuine connection. In all these ways, recognizing jealousy becomes a cornerstone of maintaining your emotional health and safeguarding your self-worth. It's not about blaming others or dismissing their feelings, but about seeing clearly so you can protect yourself, grow, and thrive despite the envy that might cross your path. Responding with grace instead of anger is one of the most powerful ways to maintain your sense of self and keep your power intact, especially when faced with jealousy or negativity from others. Anger is a natural response to feeling attacked, misunderstood, or undermined, but reacting in anger often gives away your power. It can escalate conflicts, damage relationships, and leave you feeling drained or regretful. Grace, on the other hand, is a deliberate choice. It's a reflection of strength, emotional intelligence, and self-control. When you respond with grace, you rise above the situation instead of being pulled into its chaos. Grace doesn't mean passivity or ignoring your feelings. It means acknowledging your emotions internally, but choosing not to let them dictate your external behavior in a way that diminishes you. It's the ability to remain composed, calm, and clear-headed, even when someone tries to provoke you. This kind of response disarms negativity because it refuses to feed it. When someone throws jealousy, criticism, or backhanded comments your way, meeting them with grace signals that you are not easily shaken or controlled. It puts you in the driver's seat of your emotional experience. Responding with grace allows you to keep your dignity. When you react with anger, it can blur your message and damage how others perceive you. People may focus more on your outburst than on the content or context of the situation. Anger often invites defensiveness or retaliation, which creates a cycle of negativity that is hard to break. Graceful responses, by contrast, communicate confidence and maturity. They show that you are in control of yourself regardless of what others say or do. This can shift the dynamics of any interaction, often diffusing tension and opening the door for more productive, respectful communication. Grace also protects your mental and emotional energy. Anger can be exhausting. It often lingers long after the triggering moment has passed, replaying in your mind and interfering with your peace. Graceful responses help you move through difficult situations with less emotional baggage. They create space for you to process what happened without becoming consumed by negativity. Over time, practicing grace strengthens your emotional resilience. You become less reactive and more intentional, which means you conserve your energy for the things and people that truly matter. Choosing grace over anger can change how you view yourself. When you maintain composure in the face of provocation, you reinforce your own self-worth and integrity. You demonstrate to yourself that you are bigger than the circumstances or the opinions of others. This builds inner confidence and helps you trust your ability to handle challenges without losing your cool. It's a form of self-respect that radiates outward and influences how others treat you. People notice when someone consistently responds with kindness and calmness, even under pressure, and it often earns admiration and respect. Responding with grace doesn't mean ignoring injustice or mistreatment. It means choosing your battles wisely and standing up for yourself in a way that aligns with your values. Sometimes grace involves setting clear boundaries without hostility. Sometimes it means walking away rather than engaging in fruitless arguments. Other times it means calmly addressing the issue with honesty and firmness, but without bitterness or aggression. Each of these responses preserves your power because they come from a place of strength rather than reaction. Grace can also inspire those around you. When people see you respond to jealousy, criticism, or negativity with calmness and poise, it sets an example. It challenges the norm that anger or hostility is the only way to defend yourself. It opens the possibility for more compassionate and understanding interactions. Now, in a world where so many people react impulsively or defensively, grace becomes a rare and valuable quality that can influence the culture around you in subtle but meaningful ways. Another important aspect is that grace gives you clarity. Anger often clouds judgment and decision-making. It can cause you to say or do things you regret later. When you respond with grace, you create space to think before you act. This space allows you to consider the best course of action, whether that means addressing the issue, letting it go, or seeking support. With clarity comes better choices, which ultimately protect your long-term well-being in relationships. Grace also helps maintain peace in your relationship. Whether the jealousy or negativity comes from friends, family, colleagues, or strangers, responding with anger can fracture connections and create lasting wounds. Graceful responses foster understanding and dialogue rather than division and resentment. They encourage others to reflect on their own behavior without feeling attacked. This can lead to healing and growth for all parties involved. Finally, responding with grace keeps your power intact because it aligns you with your higher self. It's a practice of mindfulness and intentionality that reflects your values and priorities. It shows that you are committed to rising above petty conflicts and focusing on what truly matters. By choosing grace, you reclaim control over your emotional state and your life's direction. You refuse to be a victim of circumstance or other people's jealousy. Instead, you become a beacon of strength and resilience, demonstrating that true power lies in how you respond, not just in what happens to you. Your growth can trigger others in ways that might seem confusing or even hurtful. But it's important to understand that their reaction is a reflection of their own inner struggles, not a commentary on your worth or progress. When you begin to evolve, whether emotionally, professionally, or personally, you naturally move beyond old patterns and comfort zones. This transformation can shine a light on what others have yet to confront within themselves. In that way, your growth becomes a mirror that reveals their insecurities, fears, or dissatisfaction. Their discomfort says more about where they are in their journey than about who you are or what you're doing. When people feel triggered by someone else's growth, it often comes from a place of comparison. Watching you step into your power, achieve your goals, or simply live authentically can stir feelings of inadequacy or jealousy in them. They may start questioning their own choices, their own progress, or their own potential. This internal conflict can make them uneasy, and instead of using your growth as inspiration, they might respond with criticism, distance, or passive-aggressive behavior. This response is a defense mechanism designed to protect their fragile self-esteem. They might try to minimize your achievements or point out perceived flaws as a way to balance the scales in their minds. It's also common for your growth to challenge the status quo within relationships. When you change, the dynamics you once had with friends, family, or colleagues may shift. People get comfortable with who you were, the roles you played, and the patterns you kept. Your evolution disrupts that familiarity. For some, that disruption can feel like a loss or a threat. They might resist or try to pull you back to what's normal or expected. This resistance isn't necessarily about you personally. It's about their own fear of change and uncertainty. Change requires them to adapt, and adaptation can be uncomfortable or scary. Sometimes when your growth triggers others, it exposes unspoken power struggles. If you are stepping into leadership, confidence, or independence, it might unsettle those who once felt in control or superior. This can provoke jealousy or resentment. The way they express these feelings varies. Some become distant, others critical, and some might even try to sabotage your progress. These reactions are rooted in their fear of losing influence or status. Recognizing this helps you not to internalize their behavior as your failure, but rather as their challenge to work through. It's crucial to remember that your growth is your responsibility, but others' reactions are theirs. You cannot control how people respond to your success or transformation. You can only control how you carry yourself and how much power you give their reactions over your emotions and decisions. When you accept this, you free yourself from the burden of managing other people's feelings or expectations. You can focus your energy on continuing to grow and thrive without being weighed down by their discomfort. Sometimes the triggering reaction of others can feel like rejection or betrayal, especially if it comes from those closest to you. It's painful when someone you care about seems threatened by your growth, but it's important to distinguish between love and support versus fear and insecurity. True supporters want to see you rise and will find ways to encourage you even if your growth makes them reflect on their own journey. Those who react negatively are often struggling to reconcile their feelings. Their behavior is more about their internal battle than about your value. Understanding this dynamic also helps you cultivate compassion. When someone is triggered by your growth, instead of responding with anger or hurt, you can choose empathy. You recognize that they are dealing with their own fears and doubts. This compassion doesn't mean you tolerate disrespect or limit your progress to make them comfortable. Rather, it allows you to approach the situation with a sense of calm and understanding, reducing conflict and preserving your own peace. Your growth also serves as a reminder that not everyone will be ready to celebrate your transformation. Some people will cheer you on wholeheartedly, while others may struggle to accept the changes. This is a natural part of life. It doesn't diminish your achievements or your worth. Instead, it highlights the diverse paths and paces that people walk. Accepting this diversity in response helps you maintain perspective and stay centered on your goals. It's important to create boundaries when your growth triggers others in harmful ways. Protecting your mental and emotional well-being means limiting exposure to negativity or toxicity that arises from their discomfort. Sometimes this means spending less time with people who drain your energy or setting clear limits on how much you share about your progress. Boundaries are acts of self-care, not selfishness. They preserve the space you need to continue evolving without unnecessary interference. Ultimately, your growth is a testament to your courage, resilience, and commitment to yourself. It's a sign that you're willing to face challenges, break old patterns, and pursue a better version of your life. While this process might unsettle those around you, it also opens the door to new opportunities, relationships, and experiences that align with who you are becoming. Recognizing that others' triggers reflect their own struggles helps you maintain your focus and keep moving forward with confidence and grace. Your growth, your confidence, your success, they are not threats to others. They are reflections of your courage to rise above limits. When jealousy, envy, or discomfort show up around you, remember that these feelings belong to those who are still wrestling with their own fears and insecurities. By recognizing these dynamics, responding with grace instead of anger, and protecting your energy through clear boundaries, you keep your power intact. Your journey is yours alone, and the reactions it triggers in others do not define your worth. Embrace your growth fully, knowing that true strength lies in staying authentic, resilient, and compassionate, both to yourself and to those who may struggle to celebrate your light. Keep moving forward with confidence because your path inspires not just you, but the world around you.